Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron, and today I figured we'd do a little bit of a different video. I wanted to do more of a talking video and a discussion video with you guys, and this is going to be talking about the overclocks for the weapons. In this case, we're going to be looking at drillers' weapons, and we'll probably do this for each class. I kind of want to get a general gauge of what people kind of think about the overclocks in general, if they have them. And I do have stats pulled up from Karl.gg, which is the same site that I'm using over here on this side. I'm going to be referencing them over here in terms of pick percentage and also kind of my general thoughts on the overclocks themselves. I'm going to do this kind of briefly and then kind of go over what I think could be changed. These are percentages from before the new weapons were added, so kind of keep that in mind. I'm curious to see what the percentages will be. I'm assuming we'll get new percentages, or at least we'll get some sort of understanding of the percentages once the new secondaries come out about the primaries and what the pick rate is for the primaries, because obviously you couldn't do it right as they came out, because otherwise they're going to have like a 90% pick rate. Anyway, on Flamethrowers overclocks, the most popular picked overclock for the Flamethrower is the Sticky Fuel. Sticky Fuel has a 35% pick rate, which is pretty high for overclocks on the Flamethrower, and the least picked is actually a tie between the Sticky Additive and the Fuel Stream Diffuser. Now for our clean overclocks, lighter tanks gives a 75 fuel, and it has a 9% pick rate out of all overclocks for the Flamethrower. I think that's a pretty good pick rate, and honestly I don't know what else you could really change about light tanks. Maybe give it a slightly faster reload speed. I think that would be kind of nice for the Flamethrower. Maybe just a half second or a 0.25 second or something like that. I think that'd be like the only thing I would change about light tanks. Other than that, it does everything that a clean overclock should do. It gives you a little bit of a bonus. So that one I think is perfectly fine. Sticky Additive is tied with the least picked overclock for the Flamethrower at a 6.9%. This one gives you one more particle damage and then one more second of sticky flame duration. Nothing real crazy here. I feel like the values would need to be increased to make better use of this. Maybe just take away the 1 damage per particle and give it like a 3-second longer sticky flame duration, or maybe a 2.5-second longer sticky flame duration. I think that might be a little bit more appealing. Keep whatever stats it has here, and then maybe just give it like a 10% additional slowdown effect or something. That might make it a little bit more appealing. Nothing like too crazy. I don't think you could actually give it like the sticky flame slowdown from 10% to 55%, because otherwise that would be pretty crazy if you stacked it on top of this one. But I think if you went from 10% to 20%, that would be pretty manageable, or even 10% to maybe 25%. Compact feed valves is up next, and that one has a 12% pick rate, which I think is perfectly fine. That's a good percentage pick rate for overclocks. You usually want them around like the, double digits, but not going too high. More tank size, more max fuel, less less flame reach, and slightly longer reload times. I think this one's perfectly balanced. I don't have any problems with it. Fuel Stream Diffuser is up next, and this one has the other tied with the lowest amount of pick rate at 6.9%. This one gives you 5 more flame reach, but lowers your flow rate. This one, I honestly don't think anything's wrong with it. I think it's fine. It's fun to run full flame reach with this. The fuel isn't a big deal that you're shooting out less of it per second. You're still going to kill things fairly fast. If you do go with full reach, you can actually hit flying things pretty easily. So I think this is just a different way to play it, and I figure that this one will probably be the least picked, regardless, just because a lot of people aren't going to favor the reach of the flames over anything else. So I think it's fine where it is. For the unstable ones, both our unstable ones actually have pretty high pick rates, and first up is Face Melter at 29%, so the second most picked. This gives you more particle damage, more flow rate, but you lose out on tank size and you lose out on flame reach. This one, again, I think is fine where it is. I don't think that this one needs to be buffed or nerfed or anything. Gives you a nice amount of damage bonus, gives you a nice amount of damage per second bonus, but you lose out on the tank size, so you usually want to make up for that. And then it loses out on flame reach, which you only have those 2 options in tier 1, so you're picking one or the other, which I think is a good balance to where you can't just pick both and then get nothing but bonuses for it. You have to take a hit somewhere, either in reach or in tank size. And Face Melter does a ton of damage per second if you can just get right up next to something. So no complaints there. I still think that this one would get picked even if you did change it a little bit. I don't know really what you would change about it. And then our most picked overclock, or at least was the most picked overclock, I'm not sure if it is now, is Sticky Fuel. And Sticky Fuel gives you more sticky flame damage, more sticky flame duration, but less tank size, less ammo. Again, I don't think that there's really anything wrong with this one. You can get a lot of value out of this, but it does take time for you to get value out of it, so it's not an immediate reward. It's better against crowds. It's not super strong against single targets. It's not bad against them, though, either. Downsides can be made up for a little bit because you can go with tank size, you can go with fuel. So you could take a tier 1 and then a tier 3 and negate whatever those effects are and just have the bonuses. You could also just embrace them, go with the low amount of ammo. That works fine too. So I think the Flamethrower is a very good example of Overclocks done well. The one thing that I would criticize the Flamethrower for in terms of its Overclocks is that all of them are kind of basic. They just kind of change base values of the Flamethrower. You know, more damage, longer reach, more fuel, you know, less fuel, more damage over time. Nothing real crazy. It doesn't change the Flamethrower into anything different. If you like the base Flamethrower, you're going to like the overclocked Flamethrower. So I would like to see maybe the Flamethrower have an overclock that changes it in some way. Maybe add a 7th overclock to this. I don't know if they're going to add more overclocks to some of the base weapons. I kind of hope that they do. Now, the Cryo Cannon, I think as of when these stats came up, the tuned cooler was still a clean overclock, but I'm not entirely sure about that. It might have been a balanced as of then, because it was a clean overclock at one point. Now, for the percentage pick rates for the Cryo Cannon, tuned cooler is the most picked by far at 45%. Which, if this was the clean one, that's completely understandable because the clean one was pretty busted. Once they made it balanced, I think it's less so. I still think it's probably the best overclock overall for the Cryo Cannon, at least when you're playing in multiplayer. So first up, we got the improved thermal efficiency. This is a perfectly fine perk. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. 25 tank size and lower pressure drop rate. Two nice things. Works really well on every build, so great for a clean one. And since it's our only clean one, it would be nice if we got another clean one for the Cryo Cannon, which we did have, but it was a bit overpowered. Tuned cooler, still probably the most picked overclock for the Cryo Cannon. Freeze things faster, lowers your flow rate, and your charge up time is longer. It also messes with your pressure gain rate. So it does have some downsides, but the faster freezing is really what sells it. It's great that you can freeze multiple enemies, and if you pair this with like the tier 5 cold radiance, you're still freezing everything around you relatively fast, which is great for the team. So it's still probably going to be the most picked one for the team just because it helps out so much when you have so many frozen enemies. So I don't know how you would really change this and still keep it where it's freezing things but not necessarily too strong or anything like that. Then we've got flow rate expansion. This one I think is the least picked. Yeah, this one only has a 4.8% pick rate. So the least picked, and I understand why I don't pick flow rate expansion very often. Pressure gain rate way higher, pressure drop rate way higher, but your flow rate dropped. So you can potentially freeze things faster, but your gun can overheat quicker. It's a very odd mechanic in the game, and I don't really think it helps the Cryo Cannon at all. If it was me, I'd probably rework this one entirely, just because this one isn't really that appealing to take over the other Cryo Cannons, because it really messes with just how you use it in general, since it messes with both the pressure gain and drop rate. If you're used to using the regular Cryo Cannon, this one's going to feel really bizarre. Then we've got Ice Spear. I don't think there's anything wrong with Ice Spear, really. This consumes 50 ammo. You shoot out an Ice Spear. It does AoE damage. It does direct damage. But then it makes it so your gun is unpressurized, so you have to wait for it to repressurize. And there is a 1 additional second delay on it. So you're probably going to shoot this switch to your secondary. I think this is perfectly fine balanced overclock. This one has an 11% pick rate. It's really good on elimination missions. It's pretty useful for picking off targets at a distance. It is one of the few options that Driller actually has for long range. You can kill things like menaces with just one shot. You can kill spitballers pretty fast. Then we've got Ice Storm. This one I used to hate, but I really like it now. This one doubles your damage and then doubles your damage again when enemies are frozen. But it reduces the capacity to freeze things. You also lose out on tank size, and your pressure drop rate is increased. It's going to take longer to freeze things, but you are doing a lot more damage to those frozen enemies. I think this is also a pretty fair overclock. This one has a 14% pick rate, so better than all but Tuned Cooler, actually, in terms of pick rate. Which makes sense. You can get a lot of damage out of this. If you build it for damage, it's pretty good. If you build it for freezing, it's still okay. The downsides are significant. You do feel it, especially compared to some of the other overclocks or just the regular Cryo Cannon. You're not freezing things very fast. But when things are frozen, you are killing them really quick. This does feel very much like you're running the Flamethrower in a way. And just you have a different status effect rather than lighting things on fire and potentially slowing them down. You freeze them solid and then do more damage to them. Snowball has a 12% pick rate. And this one functions pretty similar to Ice Spear, where you shoot out a snowball, which acts pretty much like a Scout's Cryo Grenade, freezing all enemies within an area, or at least building up a lot of frost on an enemy. But then this does make it so your gun has to wait to repressurize, and you also lose out on 100 tank size in total. This one, I honestly don't think I have really any problems with. It can be really strong on certain boards. It's really good against hordes. It's really good against Mactera plagues. Outside of that, on like elimination missions, it's not that great. It would probably just be better to go with one of the other overclocks. You can run through ammo potentially fast with it if you are spamming the snowballs pretty often. Now, Corrosive Sludge Pump. So we don't have any numbers on the Corrosive Sludge Pump. We don't have any numbers on any of the new weapons. So I'm just going to be guessing as to which is the most popular overclock for these. For the Corrosive Sludge Pump, I'm betting that the most popular overclock is probably Disperser Compound. And the least is, I'm probably going to say the AG Mixture. I think AG Mixture would probably be the least picked overall. That's my just speculation, though. I have no idea. I don't have any data to back that up whatsoever. But let's talk about the overclocks. First up, we got the Hydrogen Ion Additive. This one got nerfed shortly after it came out. It used to be really strong. Now it's still pretty good, though. This one makes it so that your corrosive damage per second is increased, kind of. It's a bit weird how it works. And the corrosive slowdown is a little bit better. Both of those are buffs. It's just a nice little increase to the gun that it works with every build. I don't really have a problem with this one. I think it's a fine, clean overclock. We've got the AG Mixture, which increases the projectile velocity and makes it so gravity is less affected, or makes it so your projectiles are less affected by gravity. This one was the very first one that I got for the Sludge Pump, and it's okay. I'm honestly not that impressed with it. The projectile velocity is nice, and the gravity is kind of nice too. You can get some weird effects to work with this, where you can have the goo drip down on enemies, but it's really inconsistent. I feel like this one should get maybe a little bit of a buff. I'm not exactly sure what it would get. Maybe give it slightly more direct damage when you hit something, because you are more able to actually hit enemies. I think that would be a fine bonus. Or increase the velocity by a bit more. Then we got Volatile Impact Mixture. This gives us more regular shot damage, more area shot damage, but less duration of our puddles pretty much, and less corrosive damage duration. Our puddles aren't doing as much, but we have a better weapon for firing one sludge ball at a time. And if you charge this up and use it in crowds, it still works just fine on crowds. Duration on the puddles really isn't that bad. It's not that noticeable in my opinion. And the extra damage is pretty nice. I think that this might be one of the more ammo efficient overclocks for the Sludge Pump. At least it feels that way to me, because it does do quite a bit of damage and it kills things very fast. It's also pretty flexible in how you want to build it. I think that one is perfectly fine. Disperser Compound increases your fragment shots, increases your fragment damage, but you lose out on charge shot area damage. This one's really good though. This one lets you cover a large area, lets you do damage over time. If you build it for slowdowns, it can be pretty good. If you build it for armor breaking, it can be really good. If you have something to light the sludge on fire, it can be really strong. So if you have something like an Inferno Breach Cutter on your team, or a Flamethrower on your team, or just anything that can set the sludge on fire, it can be really, really strong. It's mostly going to be good against hordes though. It's not going to be that great against large enemies. Using charge shots against large enemies is not a good idea, because you're just doing such reduced damage. You mostly want to save that for crowds, and then just shoot it one at a time for larger enemies, or use your axes, or use whatever your secondary is. I think this is a fine trade-off for this. It doesn't change the Corrosive Sludge Pump into anything crazy, but it is good. Then we have the Goo Bomber Special. This one I like. It can get played up a little bit more than I think it deserves, though. It's a fun overclock, and it can be really good on certain missions, but on other missions, not as much. Like on elimination missions, it's kind of meh. On escort and salvage missions, it can be really good. Any place where you got to hold the point can be pretty strong. Outside of that, it's fine. So it does mess with how the Corrosive Sludge Pump works, which I think is a good thing. I like it when overclocks do that, when it actually changes the weapon pretty significantly. It's just that the payoff for it is kind of okay. It works well against hordes, not so good against big things, not really that great against flying things at all. Like I said earlier, it's probably better on any sort of hold the point areas, or like escort missions, where you can guarantee enemies are going to be coming towards you, and you can kind of lay these out in line so that the bugs start walking across them. Again, good with fire, so if you have somebody else that can light it on fire, or you're lighting it on fire yourself, can rack up some decent damage. It also depends on how like wonky the cave is. If the cave is really weird, it might be difficult to use this effectively. And then we've got Sludge Blast, which Sludge Blast, I feel like it has some issues. It's not as bad as I had previously thought it was. I've always thought that Sludge Blast has been really fun, and I still stand by that. But I think it does need some buffs. This lets you turn your Sludge Pump into a shotgun, but you lose out on magazine size, you lose out on ammo, you lose out on charge splash damage, your reload is longer, and your charge time is slower. So you kind of have to build around this one. It can be really strong against certain enemies. It's really good against dreadnoughts, and it's really good against oppressors, because you don't need to be that accurate with them. You can just fire right at the face and hit any part of it, since it just punches right through everything. So like that is very useful. That is one super useful thing about it. I don't think it deserves as much downsides as it has, though. I don't think it needs to have this many. If you just gave it back ammo, I think it'd be fine. Or if you gave it charge shot damage, it seems kind of weird that you lose charge shot damage when you're doing this. I feel like it needs another upside rather than just the shotgun and the velocity. The velocity's nice and the shotgun mode is fun. It's pretty good against flying enemies, and it can be good against hordes potentially. It can also be kind of underwhelming against hordes. And then let's talk about the secondaries too, with their overclocks. At least we do have numbers on this. So first up is the Sabata, and the most popular pick for the Sabata is automatic fire, with the least popular pick being chain hit. Kind of what I would expect, really. Chain hit, I feel like this one just needs to get buffed. This one's just not that great. It's an overclock you toss on when you don't have anything else. Maybe if it had a percentage chance of bouncing again after its hidden enemy, I think that would make it a little bit more interesting, because right now it's not really that great. It's just something you throw on when you don't have anything else. Homebrew powder on the Sabata is, I think, fine. The damage bonus can be pretty significant if you do high roll it, and if you build damage for it, it can be good, especially against MacTerra. It's not one of my favorites, though, just because it randomizes your damage, so you do have to usually build for damage so that you're not kind of low rolling. I think it could be buffed up to where like the revolver is, where you could get between 75% damage and 200% damage. I don't think that would be overpowered for the Sabata, and it would be kind of nice to actually be hitting hard every once in a while. For the oversized magazine, I think this one's fine. Increased magazine size, but increased reload speed. This one's great if you want to run Born Ready on Driller, especially if you're running pretty much anything with the Flamethrower or with the Corrosive Sludge Pump, because obviously you're not going to run it with Cryo Cannon. That way you can be firing whatever that weapon is, switch to it, and then your Born Ready will reload one weapon. You never actually need to reload. This makes it pretty effective at killing everything that it was already good at killing, and just a nice overclock. I do wish the Sabata would get another balanced overclock, though. I didn't say the percentages of these ones. Homebrew has an 8.5, and Oversized Magazine has an 11.5, so pretty normal. Most picked overclock, automatic fire, increased rate of fire, makes it full auto, double the base spread, or a little bit more than double the base spread. Sabata's still pretty manageable even with double the base spread. I don't think automatic fire needs to be changed. It would be kind of nice if it had another buff to it, though, because just being full auto and having increased rate of fire, I don't think helps it that much. Maybe give it more damage for each continual hit, or maybe give it more weak spot damage. Honestly, think that would be a nice buff for it to have, because even though this is the most picked one, it's still not staggering. It's still not like overpowered or anything. It's just a nice quality of life overclock. Then we've got Explosive Reload. This one has a 20% pick rate, so second most, which makes sense. This one gives you embedded detonators for the Sabata, but it cuts down on your ammo, it cuts down on your magazine size. I don't think there's any problem with this one. This one's pretty good. It's highly specialized. It does change the weapon quite a bit. It's great for killing big things, great for killing like the flying rocks on escort missions, but it does come with a pretty significant downside of cutting your ammo and cutting your magazine size. And then we've got Tranquilizer rounds. This makes so every bullet has a 50% chance of stunning the enemy for 6 seconds, which is a very long stun time, but you lose out on magazine size and rate of fire. This one I think is perfectly fine too. You don't lose out on your overall ammo, really. I mean, 4 magazine size, so you lose out on 4 bullets technically. Your rate of fire does suffer, but I feel like that's a fair trade. I kind of wish you did have an extra rate of fire choice here in one of these tiers. I think that would be a nice addition to the Sabata, maybe to potentially make up for this one, but I think it would also go really well with the oversized magazine. So that would be more of a complaint on just the mods of the Sabata, though. And we'll talk about them maybe in their own video, too. So with the EPC, its most picked overclock is energy rerouting with 31%, and its least picked is magnetic cooling with 3%. So that's kind of interesting. Energy rerouting is great. I honestly don't think it needs to be changed. I think it's perfect the way that it is. More battery size and more charge speed is great for a clean overclock. It's everything you could want for it, and it works with any build. I'm assuming that's why it's the most picked, is because it works with any build, so you just slap it on and play whatever you want with the EPC. Magnetic cooling is the least picked, and yeah, this one I kind of understand why. It's more of a crutch overclock to be using for like EPC mining, but once you get the hang of EPC mining, it falls out of favor simply because energy rerouting is better, heat pipe is better, and persistent plasma is all better for that. And that kind of makes sense. I'm not sure how you would really change this one to make it better. I think it's kind of okay where it is. Maybe give it something else. Maybe give it like one less ammo used per charge shot. I think then it would be okay. I don't think it would be overpowered, and I don't think it would be picked more than heat pipe, because it still wouldn't be as ammo efficient as heat pipe, but it would be another option to take, and it would be more safe to take than something like heat pipe would if you're just getting used to EPC mining. So that would be my suggestion for that one. Heat pipe used to be the most picked overclock just like ever, when it was just super strong because it had like no downsides, but ever since it got nerfed, it's not as strong as it used to be, which I think is fine. It has a 13% pick rate, which is perfectly fine. Heat pipe has always thrown me off, and it's more a matter of preference than anything. This one makes it so your charge shots are more ammo efficient, which is great for EPC mining, and you get a faster charge speed similar to energy rerouting, but your charge shots build up heat faster and you can overheat quicker. So it's much more finicky to get used to. And that's why I don't really use it all that much, because you have a very small window where you can screw it up and just overheat your gun and not be mining stuff. Just shoot out a regular charge shot. You can overheat your gun pretty easily. I think the heat pipe is actually fine where it is now, even though I find it a little bit underwhelming, as especially opposed to what it was. Moving on to heavy hitter, which has a 28% pick rate, which I'm kind of surprised at. Heavy hitter would probably be the one that I'd recommend for people who just want to spam fire the EPC. It's pretty strong then. Gives you more regular shot damage, you get more heat per shot, and you lose out on battery size. I think this one's fine because it just builds towards a particular playstyle. This one might have actually got more picked since we've got the corrosive sludge pump, because you can build this for fire. You got overcharger as our unstable overclock, which has a 9%. Overcharger is pretty good too, but it's very specific. It's very good against crowds, and it can be decent against large enemies. However, you do have to build for it. This gives you more charge shot damage, more charge shot area damage, and a larger AoE, but it takes more ammo to use and your cooling rate is worse. I think that's a fair trade-off for giving you more AoE, and it does make the EPC more specialized towards AoE damage. So you don't want to be taking this for like EPC mining, and you don't want to be taking this for normal shots. If you build all charge shot damage though, or ammo and charge shot damage, it can pay off though. So no complaints there. And then persistent plasma has a 14% pick rate, which I think that this one is probably one of the strongest ones for the EPC. This one takes away charge shot direct damage and AoE damage, but gives you persistent plasma that deals damage over time and slows all enemies down. That's pretty strong, especially since the damage over time is likely going to overtake the amount of damage that you lost. So even if you don't hit something directly, you can still do more damage to that, and it clears up hordes pretty well. You're also not at any sort of deficit when it comes to ammo, so you can build this however you'd like. I honestly don't know if I would change anything about persistent plasma. I think it's fine the way that it is, because it only really gets really strong when it's combined with other effects. Because you can combine it with a full slowdown sludge pump with the persistent plasma and with the neurotoxin grenade and get up to something like 91% slowdown on every enemy, which is pretty crazy, but you are using 3 separate things to get to that, so I don't think that that makes it overpowered. Alright, so that was all the overclocks for the driller. Tell me what you thought about this. Tell me if you'd like to see more of these, more discussion videos. We also have the stats pulled up so we can see how much each individual mod also gets picked, which I think could be very interesting. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Special thanks to my supporters over here on YouTube and over on Patreon. They get early access to videos like this, and if you'd like to be a part of that, you can. There are links down in the description. Thanks everybody who does that. It really does help out the channel a lot. I hope you guys have a great day. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!